Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. Look, if you're after a high-signal, zero-noise breakdown of the most crucial policy insights out there right now, well, you are exactly in the right place. We're going to be distilling today's core UPSC-relevant editorials and reports into a super clear, structured format. We've got a ton of fascinating ground to cover, from international relations to public health, so let's just dive right in.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at 5 key areas: AI and digital rights, securing the Indian Ocean, El Niño's economic threat, NEET vulnerabilities, and lastly, tackling adolescent malnutrition.
Starting off with Section 1, AI and digital rights, and the call for constitutional guardrails.
So there's this really striking argument bubbling up in recent policy analysis. It goes like this: the new digital slavery needs constitutional guardrails. It's actually rooted in remarks by Pope Leo XIV and analyzed by lawmaker Shashi Tharoor. And honestly, it presents a pretty profound perspective. The idea is, if left unchecked and just quietly surrendered to private tech monopolies, artificial intelligence could literally turn our personal data into a form of digital subjugation. I mean, the stakes here are tied directly to fundamental human dignity.
And it's really fascinating how our whole understanding of AI is shifting right now. We're kind of moving away from that whimsical, almost cartoonish promise of helpful little robots and fun augmented reality, and we're finally waking up to the highly complex systemic reality of AI being integrated into our global infrastructure. We just can't rely on vague good intentions or backward-looking regulations anymore. We absolutely need independent, proactive public oversight.
Okay, so what would that oversight actually look like in practice? Well, policy experts are mapping out 5 foundational pillars here. First up, it starts with a strictly rights-based framework that prioritizes your digital autonomy, basically making sure citizens have unalienable rights over their own data. Then, it demands strict consent protocols. Why? To prevent algorithmic discrimination in life-altering things like employment and healthcare. It also calls for democratic accountability and independent audits of those massive black box recommendation engines. And perhaps the most crucial takeaway here is this: we need to treat the right to an unmanipulated information ecosystem not just as some niche tech issue, but as an absolute, indispensable extension of our fundamental rights to life, liberty, and free expression.
Moving right along to Section 2, securing the Indian Ocean, elevating the India-Seychelles partnership.
So India is increasingly treating the Indian Ocean as a shared home, and its relationship with the Seychelles, it's a perfect example of just how incredibly fast things are evolving on this front. Let's look at the timeline. Back in February 2026, we saw the Seychelles Joint Vision Framework and a massive $175 million economic package. Fast forward just a bit to late June, and Prime Minister Modi becomes the first Indian Prime Minister to actually address the Seychelles National Assembly. This relationship has just rapidly transformed, going from purely transactional diplomacy to a really deep parliamentary kinship, and it all falls right under India's evolving vision, Mahasagar Doctrine.
Now, what's really crucial to understand here is the sheer breadth of these 19 bilateral outcomes. We aren't just talking about defense, though don't get me wrong, handing over the fast patrol vessel PS L'Espoir to help them monitor their 1.3 million square kilometer exclusive economic zone is huge. But we're also seeing rapid advancements in UPI-based digital payments, space cooperation for peaceful uses, and even vital healthcare infrastructure, like laying the groundwork for a brand new Seychelles National Hospital. The big takeaway? This partnership is increasingly being measured in delivered, on-the-ground capability rather than just empty diplomatic declarations.
All right, on to Section 3, El Niño's economic threat, climate shocks, and India's farm value chain. Right now, there is one really stark number driving a lot of economic anxiety, and it's 43%. According to recent data logged by late June, that represents our nationwide rainfall deficit. And honestly, it gets worse. That figure actually spikes to an alarming 56% in the critical central Indian farming belt. Just to put that into perspective, that's the area that accounts for the vast majority of our soybean, cotton, and pulses.
And this whole situation brilliantly illustrates the climate trap we find ourselves in right now. Normally, the Indian monsoon is incredibly dependable, but right now we've got a super El Niño forming. That's the warming of the Pacific that causes weak monsoons and harsh summers here in India. Now, usually, we get saved by a positive Indian Ocean dipole, or IOD, which is a temperature difference that can kind of soften El Niño's blow. But currently, the IOD is totally neutral. It's offering zero climatic cushion for our critical kharif crops as we head into planting season.
So what does this all mean? Well, the macroeconomic ripple effects are pretty staggering. We're essentially looking at a massive domino effect here. First, 166 key reservoirs are sitting at a mere 26% capacity, which threatens not just irrigation, but drinking water and hydroelectric power.
Then, when crops fail, inflation surges for everyday staples like cooking oil, sugar, and proteins. And finally, this brings up the looming possibility that New Delhi might have to enact global export bans to protect our domestic supply. We saw this with the 2023 rice ban, and if it happens again, it would absolutely rattle the global food system.
Which brings us to Section 4, the NEET examination vulnerabilities, moving beyond the physical question paper.
Here's a question that cuts right to the heart of the editorial analysis we're unpacking today. Do unprecedented security measures actually address NEET's real vulnerabilities? We've seen all these extraordinary interventions and security measures put into place recently. But we have to ask ourselves, does guarding the physical movement of printed papers and personnel actually fix what appears to be a deeply broken ecosystem?
Well, when we trace the history of the exam, a pretty clear pattern emerges. The massive 2026 cancellation following targeted leaks, FIRs, and cyber hacks, that wasn't just some isolated event. Ever since its inception in 2013, this exam has been plagued by controversies. I mean, remember 2015? We had a complete re-examination triggered by a credibility crisis back when it was the AIPMT. Fast forward to 2024, and we saw controversies involving incorrect papers, grace marks, and score inflation. So mapping it out chronologically like this, it's incredibly clear that this is a recurring pattern of anomalies spanning well over a decade.
Let's break down what experts are calling the invisible vulnerabilities of the system. Step 1 begins with weak cybersecurity. We're talking reports of hackers accessing superadmin functions and teenagers literally diverting refunds. Step 2 is a structural flaw. By fixing the qualifying threshold at the 50th percentile, the system effectively incentivizes this endless pool of repeat candidates. And that leads right into Step 3. This creates a massive, desperate market that deeply entrenched networks of insiders and commercial coaching hubs are all too ready to exploit. So the evidence really suggests that the true battleground here is cybersecurity and systemic commercial exploitation, not just putting more physical locks on paper tests.
And finally, Section 5, tackling adolescent malnutrition, a silent public health emergency in schools.
As millions of our adolescents head back to class, public health experts are sounding a major alarm. The data is showing us that urban lifestyle hazards, things like highly sedentary behavior and ultra-processed diets, well, they're no longer just a city problem. They are now aggressively infecting rural communities as well. Because of this, schools have become the absolute most critical setting for disease prevention.
Just take a look at the latest National Family Health Survey, or NFHS-6 data. It is a massive wake-up call. Look at this surge in obesity. For women aged 15 to 49, it jumped from 24% to almost 31%. And for men in that same bracket, from roughly 23% to over 27%. We're basically facing this immense double burden right now, undernutrition in children combined with a massive surge in obesity that acts as a direct driver for early-onset diabetes and cardiovascular diseases.
Now, here is a really crucial kind of counterintuitive concept that you absolutely must take away from today's explainer. It's called the thin fat phenotype. Basically, malnutrition is no longer just about thinness. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a staggering 35% of stunted children under 5 might appear physically lean on the outside, but they carry this hidden metabolic time bomb on the inside. We're talking about things like adult-level triglycerides in kids. It's wild.
So how do we fix this? Well, public health experts are arguing that our schools need a total transformation. First off, we have to recognize physical inactivity for what it is, a nationwide epidemic. Because of that, structured sports must be guaranteed as core educational components. No more treating them like optional extras, right? Furthermore, we need to establish strict UPF-free, meaning ultra-processed food-free zones in and around our schools. We literally have to prevent these adult-onset diseases right at the adolescent root level before they even start.
Which leaves us with this final, overarching thought as we wrap things up today. We've explored the urgent need for constitutional AI guardrails, we've looked at rapid diplomatic shifts in the Indian Ocean, impending agricultural climate shocks, systemic testing vulnerabilities, and even hidden health epidemics. And looking across all these completely distinct topics, one major question remains. From digital rights to climate resilience, is our current governance and policy apparatus actually evolving fast enough for the speed of tomorrow's crises? Take a second to really think about that. Thanks so much for joining me for today's deep dive. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.